Oh, to be young again, war pugs. To remember the days when you would legitimately get into fistfights with your friends over a question of who would win in a fight. And then you put up two characters and have them just talk it out until you were ready to throw hands. Guys, that was my childhood. I received many blows to the head. This explains quite a bit about me. This is Roanoke Gaming, and this is a request that came from Pre-Knife. And this request has been here for quite some time. I do apologize, guys. I do try to get to requests as much as I can. It is the nature of the beast. It is the nature of the beast. There is a lot of you. And even though I'm fat, there's only one of me. And I'm starting to not be as fat as I used to be, which is great for me. Guys, Deep Space Necromorphs take on the Flood from Halo. Who would emerge victorious? Now, do I know about the Flood? Yes, I do. Do I know about the dangers of the Flood? Yes, I've seen questions about the Flood be asked by other people, and I have been just, for me, the Flood is just a massive, massive middle finger to everything that is civilization, love, and joy. But I know very little about the Necromorphs. I know very, very little. So, when it comes to this, I'm just going to take Roanoke Gaming's, and there's a cat in the background, I'm just going to take Roanoke Gaming's word for it. We've checked out some things from Roanoke Gaming before, and flat out not disappointed in that. Guys, this is going to be an exploration. Keep it civil in the comments, especially some of you. I know who you are. You know who you are. Thinking of it right now. Getting ready to type into the comments with a rampage of letters. Just letting us know why Roanoke Gaming is wrong, or why the person who commented before is a moron. Keep it civil. I will get the hose. I will get the hose. And just remember, just because war crimes and good times rhymes doesn't mean that you had to commit them to each other. Let's keep it fun. I'm kidding. Let's get into this, guys. Dead Space Necromorphs take on the Flood from Halo. Who would emerge victorious?
There is something innate in humans that always drives us to see what is stronger. Me personally, I would want to know if a Kodiak bear or a silverback gorilla could win in a fight against each other. For many comments on my channel I have gotten, the question is, who would win, Flood or Necromorph? And it is a question that is definitely worth being answered. More so due to the similarities and power, and as well as consequences, that these two parasitic creatures share. But who ultimately wins out? Much like two black holes running into one another, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Well, if you have wondered, you are in luck. At this point, I would consider myself fairly knowledgeable in the Necromorph parasite, and who better to fill you in on the other half of the video than Hidden Xperia with his Flood knowledge. So, let's get down to this celebrity deathmatch-esque question. Who's going to come out on top? A Flood invasion or a Necromorph outbreak? So to understand what kind of creature a Necromorph is and how it even gets started, we have to go back to the beginning. Roughly 65 million years ago, an asteroid struck Earth. Presumably, this was the asteroid that helped end the reign of the dinosaur and gave mammals, or rodent versions of our ancestors anyways, a chance to rise to power. But this asteroid carried with it something likened to a time bomb. This disease lays in wait, guiding species to their ultimate demise. This disease has a physical representation. It is known as the black marker. Over the course of 65 million years, the black marker would influence species, guiding some, in particular, us, to become more intelligent than those around them. In Earth's case, it was going to be humanity. Humanity would rise and become the dominant species, and in geologically a very short amount of time. Ultimately, this species was destined to leave its homeworld and make a life out in the stars. The marker, however, is not a benevolent gift from the gods. The black marker was found by Michael Altman and a team of researchers working in the Yucatan Peninsula in the year 2214. Upon communication with the locals, who referred to it as the tail of the devil, which also a little bit of side lore, whenever the locals would speak about the marker, they would cross their middle finger over the back of their index finger, almost symbolizing the marker itself. Nobody really knew why they did it, they just did it. Anyways, they began to study it and attempted to understand its purpose. However, the science venture would not last. It appears as though there was a made-up made-up story and a real story. The false story was that Altman was assassinated by the government due to his discovery. The real story is that Altman was actually killed by a Necromorph so that he could be used as a scapegoat by the government. This actually
So, we're back to the government plays dickish moves. Continue.
ended up making the marker government property rather than scientific property. Through their attempt to understand the black marker, it became clear that this object had the ability to induce madness in humans, stating that there were two different types of voices that could be heard. One would tell the person to kill themselves, while the other voice would attempt to further the goals of the marker. The closer and more time you spent with the marker, the louder the voices would become, until finally you succumb to the screaming in your head. It should be noted that actually, it's pretty cool, the brain does have somewhat of a defense mechanism in place to resist the effects of the marker. However, it appears to be based on level of intelligence. The more intelligent a person is, the more they can decipher the letters and symbols in place. If a person is able to do this, then the hallucinations will not appear as just sheer noise, and this will pretty much prolong their insanity. Typically, higher thinking individuals will survive longer. There are very few cases of outright immunity to the marker, but it does appear possible. The first is going to be Ellie Langford in Dead Space 2. This one was more speculation on my part, but she was around the Dead Space signal for a very long time, never succumbed to it, never showed any signs or symptoms that she was being affected by it. And then there is Lexine Weller in Dead Space Martyr, where she also appears to share the same immunity to the marker signal. Nobody really knows why certain individuals are going to be immune to it, others resistant, and then others, they succumb within almost minutes of coming into contact with the marker signal. It's very interesting. Genetic variants in the actual brain, it seems. But I digress on that. This is pretty much going to suggest that it's close enough to a 100% infection rate, as 2 cases out of tens of billions is, statistically speaking, negligible. It should also be noted that even with higher intelligence, the black marker will always find a way to manipulate the intelligent person into doing what the marker needs to propagate. And what is this propagation, you might ask? These are going to be known as the red markers, at least for humanity. Perhaps it's nature, but it can be assumed that the marker will make an apex creature that cannot exist naturally with the elements. For this species, energy will become a dire need. Upon the marker's discovering, this species will be noticing the energy that comes off of it. They will begin to replicate the black marker, specifically in humanity's portion. They make them into red markers in an attempt to utilize the energy. The Tau Volantians, which is the alien species I will talk about later on, actually still made black markers, but the reason they're red markers is because we use bismuth instead of the materials that typically a black marker would be made of. Anyways, so this will spread madness to any of the creatures, as these markers spread to all corners of the territory, and really people are going to be dumb sometimes, and they're just going to take this technology that they really don't understand, spread it out amongst themselves. Some are going to worship it, some are going to try to use it for science. It really doesn't matter. It's all going to go to crap pretty soon.
It's really not that far-fetched for humanity to sit there and take a piece of technology they don't understand and then start throwing it in things. It's really not that far-fetched. Just look up any of the DMT experiments from, earlier on. Watch people just sit there and be willingly sprayed down with a pesticide that everybody said was safe. Look at asbestos.
Black and red marker infects those around it in a way that is not tangible, and you really aren't able to shield yourself against it. Even in Dead Space 2, one of the scientists was noted as saying he hopes that the shielding that they put in place will stop the signal because they know the signal is there, but it doesn't work at all. The signal still gets to them. Basically, it releases a high frequency wave that can travel in pretty much all directions. Upon coming into contact with a person's brain, this wave will induce madness, quite quickly. This madness will drive them to kill or kill themselves. Then, once they have dropped, the real fun begins for this particular planet. With dead tissue, the marker signal now reanimates it. What was before a person is now a necromorph, and it can be presumed that while your brain is still in the driver's seat, the signal cannot completely overpower and change you by force, so it needs your brain to be out of commission. Once the task is done, the reanimation has happened, you will now serve the marker. However, it's not just your regular human body walking about. Necromorphs are vile creatures adapted to one purpose: to kill and turn others. Necromorphs come in all shapes and sizes, but during an initial outbreak, you've got two main standards: the slasher necromorph and the infector. A slasher is going to be composed of one person, but much of its body is going to be repurposed. Bones have been pushed out of the hands to become blades, and its morphology has been twisted to make it much stronger. They are able to hack and slash down people where they stand, creating more dead tissue for the marker signal to reanimate. And if you want to know why they're stronger, currently right now, you sitting there, I've already told my channel this, but our body is a lot stronger than we give it credit for.
True.
Think about your brain kind of limiting you down to about 30% of what you can actually do at all times in an effort not to injure yourself. Basically, the necromorph is going to run at 100% the entire time. Very strong, utilizing everything it's got. So that makes it much stronger than even a person who would be pumping adrenaline into themselves. So to continue on, as I stated, they're going to hack and slash their way through everybody, and really there is no counter by a normal human, and because there is no counter, you aren't going to be able to fight it. One of the biggest issues starts to arise, especially during an infection outbreak, is people are going to be trying to shoot these things in the body, but once again, because the morphology has been twisted, the body does nothing. Body shots do nothing. Headshots do nothing. It's actually limb shots. Those are going to be the only way to incapacitate it. And you don't kill it, you literally just incapacitate it. To harp on the Necromorph's sturdiness, they are also able to exist outside of our atmosphere for presumably an indefinite amount of time, and it doesn't kill them or affect them really in any way. If they are going to be left alone for a very long time, in fact, the scaff ships in Dead Space 3 are kind of giving this credence. The Necromorphs in there, all they did was simply go into hibernation. They did not die. So for the sake of time, I will say there are many different variants besides the slasher and the Necromorph, like this guy right here. Yeah, he's just really big, but we'll just stick for right now with the slasher. The infector is going to add the living to the infected by force. No more do slashers have to cut down anybody and slowly wait for the signal to reanimate the body. The infector goes directly to the brain, taking out the person and implanting the signal deep within their liquefied brain. This will convert a person into a slasher almost immediately. With these two working in conjunction, an entire station can be turned in hours.
Hell no. And I mean hell no. Get me out of here yesterday.
A planet turned in days, wiping out even the strongest defenders, and a solar system within weeks if they have capable ships. As the outbreak continues, the Necromorphs have an uncanny ability to form new variants as well. Given enough time, they will fuse together depending on where the bodies dropped, forming larger and stronger creatures capable of knocking down walls, tearing people in half, and bringing down entire ships. These can be considered the middle stage. The issue is, as long as the signal is still present in the area, regardless of how many necromorphs you cut down, the marker will repurpose their biomass into larger necromorphs, giving them basically the ability to become more deadly. Eventually, a tipping point is reached, however. When an area is completely converted, the plan switches from what is a feral form into an attempt at centralized intelligence. A hive mind will begin to form. At first composed of 1 or 2 corpses, it appears, it will possess 5 lights on its face to designate it as something different from the rest. The juvenile hive mind can command necromorphs in an area, presumably through marker influence. At this point, any remaining defenders will have been dealt with and converted themselves. If the juvenile hive mind is not dealt with, then it will become a full-blown hive mind. At this point, you're pretty much screwed. By now, the Necromorphs in the area will be highly intelligent and almost able to predict human actions on an individual level. Once the hive mind is formed, it can be assumed that even the best strategists wouldn't be able to best them, as they are the culmination of everyone's thoughts, memories, and intelligences in the area. I'm pretty sure intelligences is not a word, so we'll go with intellect. In fact, on
I'm pretty sure you can use it like that, though.
Aegis 7, a hive mind is established and was actually able to trick Isaac, a celebrated engineer who is considered intellectually adept, into bringing the marker back to Aegis 7 to trigger a convergence event. And also, if you just kind of look at the ending, which I will put up now, the door was locked, but then the door becomes unlocked. It's almost like the marker knew the asteroid was coming down, it would be destroyed, so it let Isaac get away so that it could still spread the influence of the marker. The ultimate goal of a hive mind is to do one thing: form a Brethren moon. Quite possibly the ultimate force in the Dead Space galaxy, the Brethren moon is a culmination of entire species. Upon the triggering of a convergence event, when enough bodies have gathered around the marker, they will be shot up into the stratosphere along with the marker. In fact, if you would like to see a video on the Brethren moons, a card should be up on screen right now. But just to give a quick rundown of all this, a Brethren moon is capable of outsmarting any creature it comes across due to manipulation. It can affect the cellular DNA of a creature within millions of miles and also invade the mind of a person from presumably galactic distances, speaking directly inside their head, confusing them, turning them, doing whatever it needs necessary. It can turn entire nations against one another and descend a planet into chaos by simply being in the area. But we also need to discuss the actual size of this thing.
Right.
The Brethren moon is just that, a moon. Exceedingly large in size, showing up near a planet can send the planet into panic and dysfunction geologically, atmospherically, and volcanically. But apart from all that fun stuff, it can also sway every inhabitant on the planet so that there would be no way to defend themselves. It can drive you to madness before you are even able to activate your defenses, like that awesome nuke you just installed in a satellite. Yeah, you're not pushing the button in time, bud.
Right.
The issue also remains that there is not just one Brethren moon in the galaxy. They form a network of moons so that when they find a living species, they will assimilate it into another moon to extend their reach. Basically, these guys talk amongst themselves, so even if you take out one, his brothers are probably going to show up. The creatures are also able to travel faster than light with their own being, not having to rely on the technology of creatures they have absorbed, which basically means that they can show up anywhere at any time. It is completely possible that they have already gone to other galaxies and converted all the creatures there into Brethren moons in a massive trail of extinction. Once the final stage of the outbreak has been reached, the species is assimilated into a conglomeration known as the Brethren moon, creating more dead space. So, now that we know what the Necromorphs are and what their ultimate goal is, who would win, the Flood or the Necromorphs? To hear the Flood explanation, pause this, maybe open up a new tab, and go to Hidden Xperia's video discussing the Flood.
Okay, so let me talk about the Flood real quick. Let me talk about where I think this would be. In the early stages, and I mean the early stages, the Flood has every single advantage, period. It has all of them. It has every single one. It's quicker to infect. It essentially can do more in terms of information gathering. The rate of infection is much faster. There's no infrastructure that needs to happen. Just one piece of popcorn winds up in the wrong location, suddenly you have a flood outbreak. But from what he just said about the Necromorphs and the moons, once the Necromorphs reach that kind of critical mass, I don't think the Flood could stop them. Because if what he's saying is correct, I don't think the Flood could withstand the moons. That's just a personal thought. We'll see if I was right about that in a few minutes. Warpugs, while I have this pause, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button just to help me out with the algorithm, and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get back into this.
Card should be up on screen right now. Of course, if you click that card, I'm pretty sure it will take you there on this tab, so it's kind of irrelevant everything I just said. For all those who have come here from his video, I have a hypothesis as to who would win, but it's going to be based on timing and who crosses the finish line first. I have a couple of scenarios for you, as things probably could play out differently depending on a multitude of factors. If a planet under complete flood control is hit with a marker, there is a good chance a key mind has already been formed, or at minimum a grave mind, and a grave mind is going to have access to the intelligence of countless individuals, and it is possible this could be a symbol to resist the marker signal or even outright be immune to it. In this scenario, the marker will do nothing and the flood will win. If a flood infection group touches down on a planet under Necromorph control, the signal affects the DNA of the subject, not just their cells. A flood infection pretty much converts biomass by turning the entire cell of a creature into a flood supercell. It engulfs the cell, changes it on a cell-by-cell basis. However, the signal will alter and change the DNA of the flood supercell, rendering it more biomass for the Necromorph to utilize. An interesting thought process would be a juvenile hive mind and a proto-grave mind. This would be one with kind of a numbers game, depending on who ended up where first. That would really spell victory or defeat for him. If a juvenile shows up with a marker to a flood planet, there would be probably some conversion of flood in the surrounding area, but the conflict would not last, as the flood would be rather intelligent at this point, destroying the Necros with similar physical strength. The same could be assumed for the other way. A 50-50 split would then cause a stalemate that really neither parasite could fully take over. There would be a blur line in the middle with the Flood and Necromorph probably forming almost hybrids. They would be more than likely locked in a struggle, as neither side could arguably gather enough biomass to form their final stage. A hive mind and a grave mind existing on the same planet is very unlikely. This would be a proxy war within the same system. If one planet were completely infected by Necromorphs and the other Flood, they would probably attempt to fight one another and overtake each other. Ultimately, though, it would come down to the Flood winning, however, as the Necros have never really been known to operate ships and weapons effectively, while the Flood has. The Flood would probably destroy the planet with the hive mind, giving the win to the Flood. Should a key mine and a brethren moon ever come across one another, the winner would be reliant on a couple things. First, the brethren moon.
So here's what I needed to hear, because the brother moons are insane sounding.
Has no need for machinery and can move itself, and achieves faster than light speed with its own body. They strike against the Flood as they need ships of the species that they have assimilated. A brethren moon also has another thing: its sheer size. The tentacles stretch for thousands of miles, allowing for offensively really for them to strike at ships and for the Flood not to be able to get too close. Infection of a brethren moon would not be possible, as the tissue is supported by the signal of the marker that now inhabits its body after convergence. Another issue is the brethren moon appears to be able to completely overwhelm creatures near it with a mental capacity not seen before by the other smaller Necromorphs. Much stronger than the marker signal, it is possible the brethren moon could even overwhelm the key mind's ability to outthink it. However, if the key mind is able to hold itself, or really hold its own mentally, the signal may convert some Flood, but a key mind presumably would have access to ranged weapons. A ranged weapon could be a game ender for the brethren moon. Presumably the spacefaring species would probably have some weapons at their disposal that are very powerful, so now the Flood has those at its disposal, and they should be capable of destroying a brethren moon wherever it may be. And unlike the frail individual forms that a brethren moon could stop before they were able to push the button, the brethren moon might not be capable of influencing a key mind who would be pressing the button. However,
this is true. This is true. But I still think it's a real question of would it be able to versus wouldn't be able to.
For this to happen, the key mind would need enough biomass in the entire galaxy to protect itself from the signal using neural physics. Otherwise, it would just have to rely purely on the culminated intelligence it has acquired through absorbing species. This may or may not save it. It's honestly anybody's guess if it would. Should the Flood absorb enough biomass of multiple galaxies and the Brethren moons have done the same, this would lock them in a stalemate until the universe itself is devoid of life besides these two parasites. Even still, ultimately, I would have to give it to the Flood, as their mastery of neural physics at this point could overpower the Brethren moon's offensive capabilities. So really what it all appears to come down to is signal and ability to think. If the signal from the marker runs in a different dimension than the current one, then the Brethren moon would ultimately have the win based on sheer size, abilities to manipulate, and non-reliance on technology, and also really sheer intellect, mental capabilities, and offensive capabilities. They could possibly overpower the thoughts and the minds of the individual Flood forms. If the signal runs along the lines of neural physics and operates within our universe, it is possible the Keymind would be able to resist the Brethren moon's attempt to convert it. And another thing is, really, the Keymind has access to these weapons that it's going to find. You drop a nuke on a Brethren moon, or at least enough nukes, it's not going to survive it. It's going to die. So ultimately, the biggest thing also would have to be, if we're existing in a universe that has the Halo rings as well as the Brethren moons, the Halo rings could ultimately take it out as well, and the Keymind would be able to utilize that, though I think that might kill the Keymind as well. Anyways, so who wins? In more cases than not, it appears that the Flood will win if the attacks are early enough. Necromorphs are not as intelligent as the Flood, as earlier in the wars they could be killed and converted. However, if the Flood discovers the Necromorphs during the late stages of the Hive mind, the Brethren moon and the Necromorphs will win, as long as neural physics does not allow the Keyminds to outwit the Brethren moons. But then again, who's to say that the Brethren moons couldn't utilize the same method to attack the Flood? It also appears as though the Flood must physically collect biomass, which takes longer. The Brethren moons can pretty much, if anything gets near the marker that is a Necromorph, it will draw everything off the planet. So basically, dinner comes to you. You don't have to go out and get it. So really though, even with those benefits, I'm a Dead Space guy and a Halo guy, so I'm conflicted, but I'm going to have to give it like a 60-40 split in favor of the Flood, albeit it's a close call. So if you watched all the way through, go check out Hidden Xperia's video covering the Flood. He will be covering neurophysics and pretty much everything else that we need.
Okay. Well, first off, it is very likely that the Flood have spread to and infected other galaxies, and maybe even universes too. So during the Forerunner Flood War, where the Flood essentially wiped out the Foreigners, they got so powerful and controlled.
I want to thank you guys for watching my breakdown of the Necromorph and ultimate conclusion on the Flood. Did you disagree? Well, I'm pretty sure you're already going to tell me down in the comments, but actually I would like you to tell me down in the comments because I would like to discuss it. If you like the video, then don't forget to leave a like, and if you really like the video, why not smash that sub button? More lore is coming out soon. So Doom was a success concerning morphology, so that will continue. Next up, I believe the video I'm going to be covering is the Nasales from the Metro series. As always, I would like to thank my patrons for their support. We have 2 scientists now. That is crazy. They are going to be Layla Alizarin, of course, and we got your boy Master BC. Next up on the resident tier, we have G. Anderson. Find those collectibles. If you would like to become a patron, I will drop a link down in the description. Also, going back to Doom for a second, I need to find all the collectibles, so keep an eye on my Twitch channel. I'm gonna make
Okay, so let me just talk about this for a second. So my initial impression was right. If the Flood find them early, it's almost a non-starter. Just based off of their capabilities and how quickly they can infect. And of course, later on, it all comes down to, would the Gravemind, would the Keymind be able to resist? All of those things, right down the center of where I was thinking. Now, if I'm going to tell you which one aesthetically is more terrifying, then it's the Necromorph. Hands down. That is a scary, disturbing. It hits every category of the Uncanny Valley for me. Just the long bladed hands, and the way that this guy got done. Where is he? this guy? Is it this guy? Yeah, the way that this guy got done. Oh my god. Just, this is a quarter ton of nope in a 2-pound bag. All right, this is illegal in at least 120 different countries. Warpugs, if you ever have a disease like this, please stay home. Wash your hands, because my god, man, you got an issue that not even tissues are going to solve. So even with my limited knowledge of both the Flood and the Necromorphs, I was pretty much calling it right down the center based off his description of the Necromorph brother worlds, brother moons, and honestly, the brother moons are an absolutely terrifying concept to think about. So, once again, right down the center. Early on, Flood. Later, Necromorph. Warpugs, if you like this, please leave a comment down below. Let me know. It helps me out with the algorithm. Pop a like on this channel. Check my links in the description below for Roanoke Gaming's links, as well as my own, including for the wish list for the new house, Patreon, and the Discord. Let's jump into the Discord, guys. Now, I'm going to head out from here. I'm going to try to go to sleep in a little bit here, and I'm not going to think about things bursting out of my skull. Most of the time. I'll catch you guys next time. Just... No. No, 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 no.